You're welcome back. The Pulse continues to give you all the vital signs across the news landscape of Ghana. Now, we are going to talk about the home bank scandal. But first, in the education sector, yet some more news. A statement now from the Teacher Trainees Association. I'm going to read it to you. It's the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana releasing this statement dated July 24. I'll read it quickly. It's not very long. It's signed by John Edem Abeji, who's the General Secretary, and Jeptha Nana Kwame, who's the President. It says, on behalf of the National Executive Council of the Association, we write to provide you with a crucial update regarding the disbursement of teacher trainee allowances. 1. We are pleased to inform you that the allowance payment has been confirmed and will be disbursed this week. As per the arrangement, the allowance for 3 months will be paid to eligible teacher trainees. 2. However, we have been informed that the allowance component of trainees has been reduced to 149 Ghana cedis based on the request from PRINCOF to the Ministry of Education last academic year to supplement the feeding of trainees effective this academic year. We would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation to all of you for your patience, commitment, and support throughout the fight for the teacher trainees allowance. We remain resolute in our efforts to secure the best possible outcomes for your welfare. Thank you very much. And that's the statement that is dated July 24. Coming from the Teacher Trainees Association. Now, we're joined by a few people to help us understand all of this. Professor Samuel Atintono is the National President of PRINCOF. Jeptha Nana Kwame is the President of the of the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana. And Bismarck Tay is Deputy Managing Editor, Teacher Education Journal. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, if you can all unmute your microphones so we can hear you. All right. Professor Atintono, if you don't mind, I'd love to start with you because PRINCOF comes up for mention in this statement. Apparently, it is based on a request you made that there has now been a reduction in the allowance. Help us understand, why did you request a reduction?
Thank you very much. And let me say good afternoon to TAC President, who is our own student, and then to all the principals of the 46 colleges and your cherished listeners. The background to the reduction, I would first of all want to establish that the teacher training allowances remains 400 cedis since when they brought it back. So the totality of it is still 400 cedis. There's nothing that has been reduced. Now, what people call reduction, we ought to get it right. The 400 was put into two components. One part given to the principals to feed the students, which used to be 196 Ghana cedis. And then the student then get 204 cedis, which goes to their pocket. We'd all agree that by 2022, when we had a crisis, right from the COVID, and even general food prices increase. So PRINCOF itself will be managing per day, the feeding component is 60 to 50 pesos. So we made an appeal and a request to the Minister of Education looking for some adjustment. Indeed, the actual cost that we were looking for to mitigate the situation was almost 30 cedis. But when we appeal, I think we have had discussions, and at the consultation, we knew clearly government itself for the current situation that we found ourselves, it was not possible to get the upward adjustment. So we had to do consultation. So when we did, what we proposed or at the table was, the students, after all, the 400 is for them. So if we are having challenges to the feeding, they ought to agree that part of what they take should be seeded up to add up to the feeding component. It is on that basis that we'll have discussions, and then government managed to increase to 7 cities 50 pesos, and then we needed 1 city 50 pesos to make it 10 cities per day. So it is that 1 city 50 pesos that's coming from each of the students that led to a total deduction of about 51 Ghana cedis, which means that they now have 100 and they had 159 cedis going to them. So something just a little over 50 or just around 50 cedis was taken to add up to the feeding component, which makes 10 cedis per day now.
Right.
Now, the feeding is still the same students. So even though Prinkov has taken it, it is not as if the principals are feeding themselves. It is feeding for the students. And it is because we have different that we all arrive at that. And I must indicate that that conversation took place between our stakeholder, GTEC, was the Minister of Education, as well as our own students to see the way forward. So that's why we got to where whatever now comes to their packet, instead of the 200, got to around 155 or so. Thank you.
Right. Jepta, I mean, how have your members received this news with the adjustments thereof?
All right, thank you very much. And let me start by greeting your listeners and viewers across the country and my own daddy, Professor Atintuno, as well as members of the Teacher Training Association of Ghana. Yeah, so in fact, we receiving this information and the student from, I must be honest, that it's not what the students are happy about, seeing the component that comes to them reduced, although in the same vein has gone to a component that is being used to feed them. But if I'm to speak in honesty, then I would say that the students are not happy about that, though.
The explanation from Prof. Atintono is that ultimately, even what is being taken away is still being used to feed the same students. So what's your continued complaint?
Very much. Just like he's saying, I understand from that point that it's still used to feed us. And no doubt about that, that prices of goods and services in the market have gone higher. That may warrant their request. However, the students also receiving that little component that used to come to them were grateful because in as much as it was quite little, they were still managing. And to see their components being reduced to be added to another component, what I can say is that it's in a way to also render them handicapped with whatever they use we use our components for. Because if we used to be doing printing, if we used to be doing buying handouts, if we used to be assisting ourselves in so many ways, so far as teacher education is concerned in the College of Education, in this sense, it means that we are going to be challenged. Sure.
But so Jepta, I mean, as I'm sure you're aware, the country is going through economic crisis. We're in an IMF program. Everybody is being asked to tighten their belts. So, from the perspective of yourself and your members, what are you willing to do by way of tightening your belts? If you are not happy with the adjustment to your component, then what are you willing to do to tighten your belts?
In fact, what we will be doing is basically to have the understanding or have the comprehension in whatever that repartitioning has become. Like I mentioned, it's been added to a component that is being used to feed us. So we expect that once that has gone there, there should be improvements in the food that we are being served in the College of Education, because there were times that it happened that our principals were finding it very difficult to feed us.
Yeah, Jepta, you are telling me what you expect. I'm asking what you are willing to give up.
Please come again.
You are telling me what you expect, right? But I am asking you, what are you and your members willing to give up, since we are all being asked to tighten our belts and give up something for our ailing economy?
Oh, sure. In fact, with the 15% increments that came, Teacher Training Association, its members are also paying such monies. We used to be paying examination fee of 400 cedis. Right now, we are paying examination fee of 460 Ghana cedis. And the fees we used to be paying way back last year and the previous years, we are experiencing 15% increment that we can all bear. because the government, as you said, is facing a very critical challenge in terms of finance. So those are ways that we also support. And nonetheless, we understand the challenges of the government.
Right.
That's
I want to bring in our third guest, who is joining us via telephone. And, it seems we may have lost him. So let me come back to Prof. What is the perspective of Prinkoff on that long unanswered question? You know, there's a lot of politics around this whole teacher trainee concept. And the general question that is often asked is that other professionals are not paid and fed to acquire their professional qualification. Doctors, engineers, they are not paid or fed in order to acquire these professions. Why must teachers be paid and fed to become teachers? Prof, I think you might have to unmute your microphone so we can hear you.
All right, sorry about that.
Yeah,
thank you very much. I think the question as to why teachers should be fed and other professionals are not fed should not be the issue to be discussed for now. There are different professions. Clearly, teaching is different from medicine, also from law. I think it's an intervention that's put in place for some reason to ensure that we have some kind of a support for teacher training. For me, if we want to have the conversation around it and say, well, we no longer want it, that would be a national conversation we'll have to have at some other point to look at the medicine.
What's wrong with now? What's wrong with having it now? Is it not timely, bearing in mind that the new allowances have been approved and they are going to be paid? Is this not the time to have this conversation?
I recall sometime last year, the Teacher Education Journal had it. We had a conversation. Prinkoff was there, government was there, TAC itself was there. The students had a position on it. We made some recommendations to government, clearly to the minister, with respect to a number of issues, not only the feeding one, which I think there are issues that have been discussed, and again to go for another conversation around it. So for me, I don't think it is something that we should be talking about. Should we cancel it? Should we not cancel? Where we have gotten to, and today's discussion is all around how can we manage the feeding cost to ensure that the principals who are bearing this in their colleges have some form of relief. I heard Jefta, that's our student, saying, yes, the students heard it, they are not happy. But you ask the question, what exactly do they want to do themselves? Then he veered off to talk about the fee increment, which is not the issue here. If you look at the 10 city that we are talking of, I can assure you the principals, including myself, have taken that exceptional kind of consideration to see how we manage. Because we're in Ghana now. If you take 10 cities to go and feed somebody morning, afternoon, evening, clearly it's a big challenge for everybody. But they are our students. It is some intervention that government introduced. We have to see how we can manage it, and that's what we are doing. So for me, TAC cannot at this point be saying they are not happy about the component that comes. As I indicated earlier, it is for the benefit of their own students. And he has said here that he expects quality food, he expects the quality to be good. It's we look at that context and for the student to understand why this adjustment has been made and not to be agitating for it. The worst scenario would have been if we were to say, okay, well, take it and feed yourself. We know the implications that would have happened. It's not something that could be good on our campuses.
Okay. Now, I think we have been joined by Bismarck Tay now. He's the Deputy Managing Editor of Teacher Education. Bismarck, you've listened to your colleagues talk about this new development. The change in the component is not going down so well with the teacher trainees, but they say, well, they'll take it like that since it's going to be used to feed them. I want the big picture perspective from you, Bismarck. at this point going forward, now that this money has been approved? What are the expectations of the teacher trainees going forward?
Thank you, Kudu. I believe, as rightly said by Prof, this really is not a decrease in the allowances of teacher trainees, because the allowance is still the 400 cedis. It's the increment in prices that has stated, and I believe trainees shouldn't really have a problem with this, because we all know how situations are in the country. A deeper conversation, which maybe another day will take place, would be government continuous support of the feeding of trainees as against all the other needs of the colleges on campus, and having a more proactive and holistic approach to solving the critical needs of the colleges.
Bismarck, I'm actually interested in us having that conversation today. You heard me asking Prof about it, so I'd love your perspective on it. No time like the present.
Okay, so for us at the Teacher Education Journal, we see a lot of, infrastructural deficits on campus, where there is a need for a lot of capital injection to even expand access to college education in the first place. Because of the limited infrastructure on campus now, you have at every time some people being at home because they don't have the infrastructure to accommodate everyone. That's on one side, and it would take money to invest in those critical infrastructure on the campus. Secondly, the payment of allowances also places a burden of restriction on government as to the number of people to admit to college each year. Now, I'm speaking as someone who has been a product of the teacher education system, knowing very well that the institution of the allowance was to attract people to come into teaching when the numbers of teachers were very low in the country, and also especially in posting teachers to certain critical aspects and places in the country. So, since the inception of the allowances till now, the initial objective of introducing the allowance, have we achieved the objective? And is there a required number of teachers? Is there a deficit in the number of teachers, especially at the rural areas across the country? That's one. Then also, in terms of the employment market, the dynamics now, do we have less people interested in going into teaching because the teaching profession isn't as attractive as it was in the past, or it's more attractive than it was in the past?
What are the answers? From your perspective, what are the answers to these questions?
For me, I believe the teaching profession is more attractive now because at the inception of the allowance, the salaries of even teachers was so low. Incentive for teachers was virtually non-existent, but now everybody who is doing an honest analysis will know that the teaching profession, the teacher is more in a better place now than before. And so coming from that perspective, as a journal, we believe that we do cost-benefit analysis and look at, okay, the feeding of trainees, the 400 cedis per person, that's the allowance, catering for feeding and other things, as against expanding access where a lot more people can have access to college education, and then we can have teachers go into the classroom and teach. We believe that's more of where we should be looking at, and not necessarily should the allowance be increased vis-a-vis the economic situation we have now.
Okay, I really appreciate your perspective there. Bismarck Tay is the Deputy Managing Editor of Teacher Education Journal, and we appreciate your time as well as our other speakers on that matter. All right. let's get into the home bank. This afternoon, investigations are continuing into the Cecilia Dapaah scandal as both the Office of the Special Prosecutor and the Attorney General take keen interest in the matter. The OSP raided the homes, encampments, and some close associates of the former Water and Sanitation Minister Cecilia Dapaah before interrogators of the Office of the Special Prosecutor to respond to the controversial stolen money issue. Madam Dapaah herself is currently on bail with surety after spending hours in the custody of the OSP, who had earlier conducted searches at both her official residence in Cantonments and her private residence in Abilingbe. The searches were related to the alleged $1 million cash theft by housekeepers, which led to her resignation on Saturday. The update now is that Frida Prempeh has been appointed as the new Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources. We're going to keep you up to date on that incident. But just to update you on what was missing from Cecilia Dapaah's Abilingbe home. Let's have a look at the details right now. So, well, there was $1 million cash allegedly stolen. Also, 300,000 euros cash. Also, 350,000 Ghana cedis cash. Now, in terms of valuables, 6 pieces of assorted kente valued at 90,000 Ghana cedis were stolen. 6 sets of men's suits valued altogether at $3,000 also allegedly stolen. Assorted clothing to the value of 95,000 Ghana cedis, also allegedly stolen, and assorted handbags to the value of $35,000, also allegedly stolen. Finally, assorted perfumes valued at $1,400, and assorted jewelry valued at $95,000. These are all allegedly missing, purportedly stolen by the suspects in the theft case. All right, now it's time for us to take a very quick break. Go grab yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, because when we come back, it's time for Jollof.